Welcome everybody to our next Firebuyer Live series session brought to you by International Firebuyer. My name is Rebecca Spain and I'm the managing editor here at the Firebuyer portfolio. And today we have an exclusive presentation session brought to you by Ben Wolf, the offering leader for Honeywell in Europe. Ben comes with over 11 years experience working in fire safety and will be analysing how digitisation and automation are transforming how we maintain and manage critical systems. Over to you, Ben.
Hi, so welcome to a presentation on revolutionising fire safety. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the future of automated and connected fire protection. I'm doing that from a base of working in the industry for several years now. My name is Ben Wolf. I work for an organisation called Honeywell, and I've worked very heavily in the context of being able to make sure that we can drive towards a more digitised future where we're looking at actually making things safer, making things more compliant, and frankly, making things easier for building owners and facilities managers to be able to protect the people within their buildings. So I'll kind of kick off with just an overview of what I'm going to be covering in the presentation today. So everybody on this webinar sadly will have heard of Grenfell. It's obviously had a big impact in Britain about what that happened, and also equally off the back of it, understanding what the impact is in terms of our requirements about how we can design better and safer buildings, and how we can actually help people to make sure that they're doing the best by the people in their building. So how do we do that? And this kind of gets into the crux of the matter. It's about staying compliant in that era of digital transformation, and this is what we want to be able to achieve. And then we can look through all the different options that are open to building owners and facility managers about connected services, and how we can actually start to automate things in order to make your life easier and actually make your building safer and more compliant. So looking at the first part of the agenda, what is the legislative landscape post Grenfell? So one thing to point out, there have been two fairly significant fires in the last 2 months in 2020, 2024. Fortunately, there were no injuries or fatalities, but and that is of great fortune that that's happened. But there was the tower block blaze that happened in Blackwall, and also another big London fire. Again, no injuries, but fairly significant property damage as well. And very frightening for all who are involved, in some, kind of unpleasant stories about loss of, personal possessions. Fortunately, no loss of life, in the way that we saw with Grenfell. But fires are not a thing of the past. They're very much present and have been very much in the press recently around the impact that they can have on people's lives, irrespective of whether there have been any fatalities or not. So they're still happening. They haven't gone away. We can make the assumption, actually, that since Grenfell, and everybody's heard of a lot of the reports that have been happening, and most people have probably heard of the name of Dame Judith Hackett. And I think, sometimes we can make the assumption that, right, okay, a lot of the problems that have highlighted have been resolved, they've gone away, but actually, is that the case? A lot of the stuff that we're still working through it and actually changing the legislation, changing the regulation and getting ahead of it has proven to be quite complex. But, we know that actually, in terms of the way that we do things, it's not far removed from the times that we were doing that, in terms of some bad practice that we had in place at the time of Grenfell. So I think it's everybody's responsibility, irrespective of regulation, irrespective of legislation, to actually get involved about what they can do as a responsible building owner in order to be able to make their building safer. We know that we can all do better in this regard. So looking at the kind of background about who's responsible. So in terms of the building owner, your responsibility is to follow the legislation and regulation. Take the guidance from your local fire services and local authorities, as well as actually understanding that you're kind of mitigating the risk effectively from the insurers. So and in terms of how you can be supported in order to be able to do that, it's the responsibility of the person either designing and planning the building, and then occupying and living within the building with the people within it, to make sure that they're getting the right guidance from building consultants, fire risk assessors, fire strategy engineers, all of these kind of people. And we can help you as a systems provider, Honeywell, in order to be able to comply to these different things. And we've actually got some interesting things that I'll touch on towards the end of the presentation about how we can help you within your building to stay compliant and actually make your life a lot easier in terms of automation and making the process of maintaining your system and looking after it and ensuring it is safe an awful lot easier. So, changing standards. There are new things that are coming in, and actually they're going to continue to accelerate as we start to get the output from the McPherson report, the work that Dame Judith Hackett has done, and we're already seeing that starting to creep through. So I'm going to touch through 3 core things that I've picked out as being something about changing standards, and it's not just about understanding your responsibilities with this, but equally, to put a more positive spin on it, it's about understanding your opportunities as well, because some of these are actually enabling you to do more conveniently in order to be able to manage your building more effectively. So looking at the new EN standard 5710, which was published in 2021, this really, and that is about how we can safely start to have remote processes and remote maintenance in order to be able to support your building. And that goes down from the control functions, about how you can actually manage authorized access in a kind of cyber-secure way, to make sure that people can remotely access and support your building if there's been false alarms, about how you can manage that. And then also the process about how you can actually change system parameters and settings remotely, because we know that in a digital world, we've got the capability of being able to do it, but we just need to ensure that we've got the standards to enable it to be able to happen more effectively. And I think this is an opportunity, in fact, to understand what this can do in terms of making life a lot easier for both maintenance providers and installers, as well as the building owners, to get really swift, fast response to particular issues that they may have on site. Equally, looking at the new change of BS 8644 Part 1, it's a new standard around management of safety information, and actually it gives you a lot of guidance about the digital information, the management process of that. And then how you can use that in order to be able to provide a safer environment to your building employees and the people who inhabit the building, and also how you can use this to reduce business disruption as well, and also looking at the kind of access as well, which is something very much on Honeywell's agenda. We're looking to drive innovation around to kind of making sure that fire safety is for all. Okay. So the Building Safety Act. So this is a kind of fairly significant new piece of information that has come through, and this has kind of been driven by the Dame Judith Hackett report. You've probably heard of the term the golden thread, and what this really looks at is in terms of our responsibilities of trying to move away from sometimes the contractual requirements of having a race to the bottom where everything is focused in what is in the bottom right-hand corner of a particular quote, but actually understanding what is needed by the building, what can make it safer for the building, what can help it more compliant and make it easier for people to live in. And actually, it's understanding all this thread that runs through everything from, first of all, building a building. So when you're kind of designing it and understanding what the fire safety strategy has before you've even put a spade in the ground, so you can choose the right equipment to be able to manage that, as the building goes through its particular life cycle, and then that goes through everything from the first design to the install and commissioning, and then ongoing through the kind of maintenance and life cycle processes for when it eventually needs to be replaced and upgraded and updated. And it really sets out what your requirements are as a building owner in order to be able to ensure that you're assessing that risk in the correct way. So how do you know that your building is compliant? I mean, I would imagine that a lot of people who have the responsibility of a building owner know a lot of the kind of core basics. And I suppose it depends on the complexity, the size of the building, about how you might approach that. But it's an important question that we need to be continually asking ourselves as people responsible for building safety and responsible for people who inhabit the buildings. It's not just you, it's everyone who inhabits that building. I think a lot of the people that I come across in my day-to-day work take that requirement very seriously indeed. So things are changing. It's very clear that people are getting asked a lot more questions about compliance and safety in their building when they're actually looking after it, particularly in relation to the fire and life safety systems, the detectors, the sounders, the fire panel. The maintenance processes for this are they're quite involved. They're quite time consuming. You've probably seen the guy going around with the smoke pole. That is a requirement to functionally test the building's detectors every year. And there's certain requirements that are really, kind of quite stringent. And we're finding that fire safety officers are demanding more and more information from building owners about what's what. So, you're going to start getting questions. Is there somebody back at the panel doing fire watch, so they can determine whether the test fire event coming through from the guy carrying the test part pole, is that a real fire event or not? They want to know specifically when specific detectors were tested. It's no good any longer to say that I've been able to test a certain proportion of them. How do I know that everything's been tested? What's the asset list of the building? How do you know that somebody's actually done it? Have you got really clear evidence that this has been done? And then equally, a key core part of digital transformation is about actually how you store and access a lot of this information. Because, if you keep it in a logbook, which you store inside the fire panel, and the building burns down, you've got no evidence about what you've done and how you've maintained and looked after that building. But if you use digital facilities and store things in clouds, it's accessible, and you can actually demonstrate very clearly, even after a life safety event, that you've been doing the right thing by your building. So, we're absolutely moving to a position where we're looking for stronger evidence-based solutions. And the good practice in terms of digitisation, it can provide really clear, indisputable evidence that you've been doing the right thing. So another aspect that we need to really consider, and this kind of moves into something that I'll touch on later, is the automation part of it. The number one killer of people working on buildings is working at height. And actually, if we can start to eliminate that through the processes of automation and not send people up 4-meter ladders in order to be able to do inspections that you can actually automate, can save a lot of risk on the site. We know that the requirements in order to be able to get access to different, ladder permits, for instance, can, take, and the risk assessments you need to carry out before somebody comes on site are really quite demanding. And a lot of this activity needs to take place on evenings and weekends. You need to get ladder permits. They need to go and check things in voids. They need to work on cherry pickers. So how can we as manufacturers actually start to unpick some of these kind of core questions about actually how do we manage the development of our life safety systems to start to mitigate some of these risks and actually remove them? And I'll touch on that later in the presentation when I talk about some of the automated solutions that Honeywell are offering and bringing to market currently. So maintaining your building, it's a very simple picture here. It's about capturing all the safety data and evidence that you're doing the right thing by your building, and that you're demonstrating your confidence and your competence in relation to the building safety. Uploading that into the cloud and then having the capability from anywhere, either for your maintenance provider or you as a facilities manager or building owner, being able to download that and get access to all the information you need in order to be able to ensure that your building is being well looked after. So there are lots of different solutions on the market from a lot of manufacturers providing digital services. A lot of great solutions. I'd like to think that Honeywell offers a very good one too, but equally I look across the industry, and I'm very reassured as somebody who has kind of life safety as a kind of core concern of theirs, that I'm seeing multiple manufacturers producing really nice solutions to make sure that people are looking after the buildings the right way. The Honeywell solution, the Connected Life Safety Services, or CLSS, it's really, really can benefit a number of kind of core people across the chain who look after the buildings. So if you look at the owners and facilities manager, it means that you can actually really stay on top and have complete confidence about your compliance within the building. If you look at the people who actually do the system integrators, the people who install the kit, as well as the people who provide the service or the maintenance providers, it enables them to be able to actually be a little more efficient on site, and also look at how they can offer more services to their customers. And then equally, if you look at fire authorities or just authorities in general, it's about actually being able to prove your compliance to the building if the fire authorities want to review it. But equally, you have things like the insurers who will often provide audits on buildings, and you can demonstrate very clearly that you're mitigating your risk effectively within the building. All of that is enhanced by having access to digital records and clear evidence-based compliance. In terms of the Honeywell solution, there's an overview there on the piece, on the PC, broadly the landscape, what it looks like. It enables you to look after multiple different sites, and you can look at your site, you can look at specific buildings. It gives you a full facilities overview. So everything related to the life safety system, and that could be suppression systems, it could be sprinklers. All of these things you can actually start to integrate to this. It gives you a very clear overview as to what's happened, including any recent events. It will show you if you've got any faults on the system. It will show you if you've had any fire events, be that real events or false alarms. And then equally, it can pull up certain recent reports about your maintenance. And also it can show you where you're at, because it can download a full asset list from the building and then show exactly what's been tested during that inspection cycle, so that you know that as you move to the required 100% test, that you're actually managing to achieve that across the site, and ensuring that you're getting the service that you're requesting from your maintenance provider. Keeps everybody honest. And then, it gives you further information as well about when you're managing the life cycle of the building. It gives you the age of certain devices. They don't last forever. And it enables you to kind of make investment decisions about when you need to refresh and upgrade and develop your life safety system. It really unifies all the data so that you've got kind of clear visibility, a clear overview as to exactly what's really going on in your building and your life safety system. So let's reflect on what the potential digital solutions are. There's really kind of three core levels. Effectively, if we start off at level one, and this has some benefit, but it has limited benefits, really, in my opinion, is that you're able to actually record, on a digital basis, what you've tested during the building. And it's great in terms of being able to store the information in the cloud and away from a kind of paper logbook, which we should absolutely be moving away from. But what it doesn't do is necessarily give you a clear indication about what precisely has been tested in the building. So that things have been tested, but you've got nothing to compare it against in terms of the overall asset list. And that's where level two comes in, which is really the minimum baseline from where we need to be starting from. And what this does is, whilst you're going around with the CLSS, the Honeywell CLSS solution, as well as, I've seen other manufacturers can do something similar as well, is it takes your whole asset list of all your detectors and devices on your life safety system, and then it confirms when there's been a test it when there's been a fire test on it. So you can confirm that all of those devices have been tested within that maintenance cycle. And then moving on to a third element, which is a relatively new element, and actually Honeywell has developed the world's first automated process for testing life safety systems. And we can actually, with the Notifier by Honeywell system and the Inspire system and CLSS, we can actually fully automate the functional testing of the whole building on average in just over an hour. And that means that we're fully functioning both the smoke and the heat testing. And I'll share some more information about that later. So that is, I suppose, the kind of the top tier level, because it ensures that everything in the buildings is tested, and you can't really get it wrong because it's automated. So it doesn't have an issue about things being missed because the whole process is automated. So as I kind of touched on earlier, the days of actually handing over reports saying that I've done your quarterly visit, I tested 25% of the devices, it's really drawing to a close. It's no longer really acceptable as a building owner to say, I've done my quarterly test and I tested 25% of the detectors. Which detectors? How do I know this detector's been tested? It's actually giving you very little clear evidence on how you do it. But it's also highly labour intensive. The whole process of a building can take, for the larger buildings, can take weeks and months to be able to test it. And we at Honeywell are looking to see how we can move away from that. So what automated testing is available? So if you look at the new range of system that we're able to offer you with Notifier, we've got a new range of panels which support, which are really high speed, scalable, serve most functions within the building, really capable network system. And this allied with both CLSS, which I've talked about earlier, which is your compliance and your facilities overview. This, with the automated process of testing through the self-test detectors, really gives you a complete solution in terms of ensuring both compliance and safety. And the reason why we stay compliant is in order to ensure that we stay safe. It makes your building safer. So the new Notifier Inspire panel is just being released this year. It's awarded Games Design Awards, and this this is really the kind of I'd describe this as the kind of platform on which you can build all the other rest of the solutions in order to kind of make sure that you have a really grounded, well-formed life safety system. And it's really a new start, a new era in terms of the way that we're able to deliver things. So moving on to how we actually automate the process of testing smoke and heat detectors. I'm very pleased to be able to present to you something that we're able to offer in Notifier, which is the world's first self-testing smoke detector. So how do we automate and self-test a smoke detector? The requirement is that you use real heat and real smoke in order to be able to test the smoke detector. And that's why we developed this, which is a small module that we place inside of the smoke detector that has a small amount of refined wax that we put current through, and then we turn that into an aerosol. And then through the fan, which is on the top of the module, we blow that inside the smoke chamber so we can see real smoke. Then we use the fan to be able to propel that out of the smoke detector in order to be able to prove that there's nothing blocking it. Because if we can't get rid of the smoke inside the smoke chamber, we know there's a problem. So we can raise that via the app that there's potentially an issue with it being masked. And mask detectors are a real problem. I can talk about several fire events where it's happened as a result of the detectors being covered. Very sadly, in a care home in Birmingham, there was an old people's home. They were doing some remodeling, doing up the place. I think a decorator had covered a detector. it wasn't picked up, there was a fire, the fire alarm didn't go off because it was covered, and unfortunately there was a fatality. So it has a real life consequences, and that's why it's really important to check for blockages in the detector. So that's how we check for the smoke. So that replaces somebody going around with the smoke pole. But we also test for the heat as well. We put a small amount of current through the mister, check the heat response, and make sure that it can respond to heat. So in smoke heat detectors, we can test both functions using this process and prove that it's not blocked. So really, when you're looking at any process to be able to test smoke and heat detectors, there's three core things that you need to be able to achieve. One, does it respond to smoke and heat? And I've demonstrated that, yes, it can. Two, is the smoke detector unblocked and there's nothing covering it? And through the algorithm that we have about being able to propel the smoke outside of the chamber, yes, it can do that as well. The third aspect, which is also very important, is the fact that somebody's visually inspected the detector. And we do that very simply through a beacon process. The detector itself actually emits a beacon, which has about a 10-meter coverage. And then the fire engineer goes underneath it, and they can actually pick up the information from the detector. They don't have to connect to it. It's not like connecting to some AirPods or something like that. All it is beaconing all its information, and it shares a lot of information. It will show what device number it is, what loop it's on, what fire panel it belongs to. It also shares what its text label is, its zone number, and its zone description as well. So all the information you need to worry about with that detector. Buildings change, buildings evolve. The room that was on one day was Mike's kitchen could then become Jennifer's art studio. So, we really need to be on top of what the text labels are. And that's the difference between the fire brigade or a first responder going to the right area or the wrong area of the building when there's been a fire event. So what the fire engineer can now do is actually, if the label's bad, they can get the information from the beacon, quickly update it through the app, and then it updates it via the cloud into the panel inventory. And you've always staying on top of the text labels within your building. So a very simple visual inspection. You generally look at it for compliance. Things about the distance away from the ceiling, that it's correctly attached to the ceiling in the right way, and that it's got a firm connection. And as soon as you're reassured that you're able to do that, a simple right swipe on the app enables you to confirm the time, day, and date, and which technician has visually inspected that device. Equally, it's far less intrusive. The room I'm sat in at the moment has a glass window next to us. You don't actually have to enter the room. So as long as you can visually inspect the detector, a fire engineer could happily sit outside of the room without disturbing anybody, right swipe on the detector, and carry about their day. And it's significantly more efficient than the process of actually having to get access to every single room, go up, make sure that you offer up the smoke pole, do the functional test. That's all gone away. And actually the focus of the fire engineer moves away from being really heavily focused on, the functional testing of the devices. And now it's about compliance, and it's about safety. And it's making sure that everything's correctly labelled, everything is as it should be, because the heavy lifting of doing the functional test is now fully automated. So significantly less disruptive and much safer. The real kind of core benefit of this, we've spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about compliance, is that actually if your building has automated self-test detectors on them, that everything has been functionally tested, that everything is not covered and is free to be able to detect fires. So a real, revolutionary step change in terms of the way that we do things, and significantly more efficient. The whole process of actually carrying out the visual inspection without the requirement to use smoke poles any longer, we're finding it's really significant efficiency savings. So we're less disruptive in buildings for building owners, as well as actually, I believe, improving both compliance and safety. So in terms of what this can do for you, in terms of the whole process and the whole system with both CLSS and the new Inspire system, along with the automated testing with self-test. I'd always start with safety first. I'm a safety guy. That's what I do, and that's what I live and breathe in terms of the innovations that I support in developing, and what we aim to kind of bring to market, and what our kind of North Star is in terms of what we want to be able to achieve. We want to make buildings safer. The process of that direct label check is really critical. The Notre Dame building in Paris, there was actually an issue with them being able to read the label correctly. And they actually sent people off to the wrong part of the building, wrong part of the roof, in order to be able to inspect the wrong part. Whereas actually, if you had a good label that was checked on a more regular basis, you'd be able to have caught that. Equally, the self-test detector, very important function, is because it generates a small amount of smoke and heat inside the detection chamber in order to be able to check both the smoke and heat sensors. We can actually check for anti-masking. And the way that we do that is a very simple algorithm. We look at the amount of smoke that we generate over time. And if we're not able to clear smoke from the detector, then we can then we fail it and raise it as an issue for the fire engineer to go and check that detector and remove anything that might be covering it. Very importantly as well, and a lot of building owners may not be aware of this, but it's really important to make sure that your systems are active. Effectively, when you have to do the manual testing, you're having to isolate large areas of the building in order to be able to carry out the maintenance checks. This effectively, because it's automated, it's intelligent. So it knows it's testing device number 1, device number 2, device number 3, device number 4. And then if a further detector comes out, device number 27, and it's not in sequence, it can actually stop the self-test process and raise the alert. So effectively, you're not actually having any downtime in the system at all. And then, a big focus of what I've kind of discussed with you today is around the compliance aspect of it. It gives you 100% proof. If you've got a system which has the Inspire CLSS and self-test system, you've got that reassurance that nothing's been missed because it's been automated. Equally, the digital reports, which I've given a lot of time and attention to, are very easy to download and show when you're being audited by either insurers or by the fire authorities. And in terms of the efficiency, it makes life a lot more efficient for the maintenance provider and you as the building owner. It means that it's a lot less intrusive in terms of what happens to your building. On average, it's about 80% efficient. So instead of being on a site for 5 days, you're now on site for a single day, carrying out these kind of processes. Significantly faster commissioning as well, and requiring reduced support from the building owner. Great example is that for safeguarding reasons in hotels, you often need to send somebody around with the fire technician for safeguarding purposes, and so it's not just tying up a single fire engineer's time. It's actually tying up a member of the hotel staff as well who needs to accompany them through the whole building. A lot of that starts to disappear when you start to go through the process of automating. A lot of building owners that I speak to are very kind of aware that they don't want people carrying out maintenance processes whilst they have either the offices in use or you've got people using the building. They want to often do it out of hours. So a lot of this actually starts to bring the processes from evenings and weekends to kind of back in day, because it's very discreet. You basically got one fire engineer with an app doing a very discrete process. And the beauty of this, because it is so fast, because I mentioned about the functional testing being as quick as it is that, why actually just meet the standard? And the standard is, we all know, is that these things need to be functionally tested once a year. We're actually aiming at Honeywell that we can encourage increased testing. Why not test once a quarter? Because we can, because it's so much faster and efficient. It's a process. So I'd like to just thank you for your time and attention. Hopefully it's been educational in terms of understanding the changing regulations and legislations, and what you can do in terms of selecting effective solutions for your building to be able to manage that. And hopefully to share a little bit of what we've been doing at Honeywell, especially in relation to a new range of panels, the CLSS system, and then really what we believe to be a revolutionary automated self-test process coming to market this year. So if you've got any questions in relation to that, please feel free to contact us at Honeywell and look at our website. There'll be information shared within the webinar about how you can get in contact with us or to be able to get further information. But it's been my pleasure to share this information with you. So thank you very much, and happy to take any questions at this stage.
Thank you so much for a great presentation, Ben, and on a topic that is growing kind of exponentially in the industry currently, especially as we move towards this kind of smarter future. And I also particularly liked how you spoke about what we can do, with this change in compliance and regulations at the moment that we're experiencing in the UK, and trying to unify that whole value chain from manufacturer to installer and engineer and the end user. We do have a couple of questions that I'm going to go into slightly more detail, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Perfect. So we're going to start off with just a little thing that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation. Obviously, you highlighted how automation can be the future of fire safety and mentioned remote monitoring helping combat false alarms as one of the benefits or efficiency in all of kind of fire safety systems. And I just wanted to hover on this for a second because obviously it's a pretty big deal when it comes to fire rescue services. So could you explain a little bit more detail about how Honeywell can help mitigate false alarms?
Well, really, mitigating false alarms is everybody's responsibility. I think actually I'm going to answer this question in two phases. As one, when I was talking about the golden thread is actually getting your design right. There are multiple different solutions that every fire manufacturer offers. In regards to false alarms, I think, particularly in Honeywell, we're particularly good at this. We have, kind of multiple ranges of detectors that can help mitigate against false alarms. So first of all, it starts with good design. So it's not just about what's the cheapest detector I can put in that's compliant. It's about actually understanding the built environment and understanding what is the correct detector in order to be able to have in there. Having said that, we do our, assuming we've done our best at the design stages, when you start to live with the building through CLSS, you can pick up the fire events, you can monitor them. And if you can spot particular trends with potentially false alarms coming from specific areas or particular detectors, first of all, you need to go investigate the area, understand what's going on. It could be that there's nothing wrong with the detection or nothing wrong with the way things are working, but there can be all sorts of different factors that are causing false alarms. But you can monitor and track that with the aid of CLSS because it shows the fire events. Then when you've made your assessment, you can actually look at what you ought to do about it. There are multiple different things you could do. You could change the sensitivity levels of the fire detector, or potentially, as I mentioned, if you've got a standard optical detector in there, for instance, it could be that a multi-criteria detector, which measures both the smoke and heat, is going to be significantly more false alarm immune. So it's all about making good decisions using that kind of data-led decision making set in order to be able to do the right thing and make false alarms go away, because false alarms are bad, particular issue. And it's like the boy who cried wolf. You want to make sure that when a fire alarm goes off, that it's for a real critical reason.
Definitely. And just quickly on a side note, because you gave a little bit of detail about obviously the changing regulations and the kind of contextual backdrop to your presentation. And you spoke about how, although obviously we've made kind of very much significant strides in improving fire safety and regulations post Grenfell, there is still obviously a long way to go, which I'm sure we can all appreciate. But I'm curious to know your perception of the changing of competency culture. Do you think that fully automated testing systems can help in this area?
Yes, yes, it does. But I'll explain why. So, but in a slightly different way that you might be expecting. Actually, there's a real challenge, not just in the UK, but more broadly in Europe and actually globally. I deal with a lot of kind of colleagues in the States and other areas, and you can't find good fire, engineers, technicians for love and money. They're really scarce. People who have that kind of level of expertise and competence are thin on the ground, especially post-COVID, when we've seen a lot of people leave the workforce. I can guarantee that a lot of commercial leaders within our business, one of the number one questions that they'll get asked by their partners and installers is, where can I find good, competent fire technicians? So, we kind of spin that round a bit. I mean, yes, bring and train more people into the industry, absolutely. But what can we do with this precious resource to make them more efficient? And that's where things like automated testing, 80% efficiencies, that actually you're using that really highly qualified, trained resource more effectively and more efficiently, so that instead of being on the site for 5 days, going around and kind of testing smoke detectors with a smoke pole, automate it, use their competence and use their experience to actually change away from the kind of functional testing to actually be more focused on compliance and safety, because their focus and their definition in terms of what they look at and how they perceive the building changes from that function into more kind of is it compliant, is it safe? And that's where we want to kind of focus their time and attention of the precious resource that we do have, and actually use them more effectively, more efficiently.
Definitely. And do we see any evidence of a requirement for digital maintenance and reporting coming up in other countries? Obviously, we focus primarily on the UK for this session.
Yeah, really good question. Actually, we do. That's why at the top of the presentations I talked about standards like EN 5710, the change, the new kind of other requirements that are coming through the golden thread. We're going to see this increasingly, and actually just take a look at what's happening in other countries. I deal a lot with, Honeywell's an American company. I deal a lot with what goes on in the States as well. And we find that the authorities that hold jurisdiction, or AHJs, who have basically jurisdiction over a certain area, a certain region, certain area, a number of them are actually requiring fully digital maintenance reports and not accepting any kind of paper-based logbook reports any longer. And they need to be sent into a kind of central hub in the authority to ensure that they're mitigating the risk in the building and actually taking the maintenance of their life safety system seriously. So you can guarantee that if it's happening there and it's starting to happen in other countries as well, it's imminent that this will start to become a requirement in the UK and other European countries as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think Grenfell, although obviously a very poignant moment in history for the UK, also sparked a lot of changes globally when it comes to standards and when it comes to fire safety.
Sure. And I would just add to that, get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Don't wait for these new standards to come in. Actually start when, if you're looking at making an investment in your life safety system, so don't do something that you're going to have to change imminently. Do something that already is going to hit what we suspect is going to be down the road.
Exactly. And just lastly, on self-test detectors, what is the lifespan?
So it's exactly the same as the standard detector. So for the notified detector, we recommend that they're replaced every 10 years, and for good reason. By the way, these things aren't kind of weapons grade material; they don't last forever. And we need to kind of make sure that we're refreshing, updating them before they start to actually diminish in terms of their levels of performance. Really important that people stay on top of that and don't just assume that they can last forever. And actually, if you look at the smoke test, it proves it functions, but what it doesn't prove is its level of sensitivity, which is really important. So that's why we need to stay on top of the kind of maintenance processes. So the guidance for notified detectors is 10 years, and the self-test module, that will absolutely last 10 years as well. It's a wax, it's a hydrocarbon, it's not going anywhere. So, and ultimately it can do multiple tests. We recommend fair usage is 4 tests a year for the self-test module. But in effect, it will probably do a reasonable amount more than that. So if you want to check for things, anti-masking more regularly, if you want to prove that the system functions more often, you can do, because it's so quick and efficient now.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for your time and obviously your insightful presentation. If anybody would like to find out more about Honeywell, you can see that there'll be a link in the live discussion box that will come up now, and you can visit the website directly. It's been a pleasure having you as part of our Fire by Live series, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you.